What if the reason you're absolutely knackered isn't because you're lazy, or behind, or not built for this life, but because you're carrying something heavy that was never explained to you? Maya didn't wake up tired. She lived tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that sits behind your eyes, even on days when you haven't done much at all. Every morning, she dragged herself out of bed, telling herself, just get through today. Not thrive, not enjoy it, just survive. Lectures blurred into one long, boring hum. Slides flashed by like they were mocking her. Equations floated around the page, refusing to stick. She'd stare at her notebook thinking, I swear I wasn't this stupid before. And the maddest part, from the outside, she looked like she was smashing it. Good grades, top uni, family bragging about her like she'd already made it. You don't know how lucky you are, people kept saying. Do you know how many doors this degree will open? Yeah, she knew. But no one talked about how heavy the keys felt in her hands. Education was supposed to be freedom. That's what her family believed anyway. Education was the answer to everything. The escape route. The proof that all the sacrifice had been worth it. So every time Maya felt like she was drowning, she did what she'd always done. She shut up. She smiled. She nodded. She pretended she was fine. Because how do you explain to people who'd given up everything that the thing they fought for was slowly suffocating you? The guilt was worse than the workload. Every bad grade felt catastrophic. Every good grade felt empty. She wasn't failing fast enough to quit, but she wasn't happy enough to stay. She was stuck in that horrible middle space, and it wore her down. The night it almost broke her. There was no dramatic meltdown. No tears. No shouting. No throwing books across the room. Just silence. Maya sat on her bed staring at her laptop for nearly an hour. Without reading a single word, the cursor blinked at her like it was taking the piss. That's when the thought crept in. What if I just stop? Not pause. Not take a break. Just stop. Quit uni. Quit trying. Quit carrying expectations that felt heavier than her own future. Her chest tightened, because for the first time, quitting didn't feel like failure. It felt like relief. That scared her more than anything. So she shut the laptop, stood up, and walked out of her room. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't sit still with that thought. Her grandmother's house was quiet that night. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your own thoughts louder. She wandered around aimlessly until she found herself standing in front of the attic door. She hadn't been up there in years. Here's the thing. Maya didn't go into that attic looking for answers. She wasn't expecting some life-changing moment. She wasn't chasing meaning or closure. She just needed a distraction. Something to keep her mind busy for 5 minutes. That's all. 5 minutes. She pulled the ladder down and climbed up. The air up there was thick with dust and old memories. Suitcases stacked like secrets no one bothered to unpack. Faded quilts folded carefully, like someone had once cared deeply about what stayed behind. It smelled like time. Maya stood there, hands on her hips, already thinking about climbing back down, and then she saw it. A small wooden box, not labeled, not out in the open, tucked right at the back, half hidden behind a pile of old blankets, like it didn't want to be found. Her stomach flipped for no real reason. She told herself it was nothing, just another box, just more old stuff, but her feet moved anyway. She reached out, and before she even realized what she was doing, her fingers touched the lid. She didn't know it yet, but that single moment, that tiny pointless decision was about to explain everything she'd been feeling. And once she opened that box, there was no going back. And that's when things got dangerous. Maya didn't open the box straight away. She just stared at it, because sometimes your body knows before your brain does that you're about to step into something you can't unsee. The attic felt quieter than before, not silent, just watchful. She told herself to stop being daft. It was just an old box, probably photos, maybe letters, nothing dramatic. Still, her fingers hesitated. She lifted the lid slowly. Inside was a single object, a diary. Small, leather-bound, edges worn smooth, like it had been handled over and over again. This wasn't something shoved away and forgotten. This was something that had been used. Maya picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, not in weight and feeling. The cover cracked softly when she opened it. That sound alone sent a shiver through her. The pages were yellowed, thin, fragile, like they'd lived a life of their own, and the handwriting, it stopped her cold. elegant, but not neat. Slanted, confident, alive. This wasn't school handwriting. This wasn't someone showing off. This was someone telling the truth. Her eyes dropped to the first line. A date, June 12, 1964. Maya frowned. That couldn't be right. 1964? Her heart started thudding for no reason she could explain. She swallowed and read on. Today they told us again that separate is equal. Maya froze. She read it again, and again. The words didn't feel old. They didn't feel dusty or distant. They felt immediate, like the ink was still wet. She sat down hard on the attic floor, back against a stack of suitcases. Her breath felt shallow. She kept reading. I watched 3 children share one torn book. I watched rain drip through the classroom roof onto their desks. If this is equal, then why does it feel like punishment for wanting more? Something tightened in her chest. This wasn't history. This wasn't a lesson. This was someone exhausted. Someone angry. Someone trying not to break. Maya hadn't even noticed the cold until then. The attic air felt sharper, like it was cutting through her jumper. She rubbed her arms and carried on reading. Entry after entry, day after day, a woman's voice rose from the pages, not polished, not heroic, human, tired, determined. The name appeared a few pages in. Alara. Maya mouthed it. Silently. Alara wrote about teaching in the segregated South, about classrooms that were never meant to inspire, only to contain. She described the white school across town, new desks, clean chalkboards, buses that arrived on time. Then she described her own hand-me-down books missing pages. Too many children packed into rooms built for half of them. Lessons carefully stripped of anything that might make a child dream too big. Maya's throat went dry. Ilar wrote about watching bright kids learn to dull themselves, not because they were stupid but because hope came with consequences. I see it in their eyes, Ilar wrote. They know too much dreaming is dangerous. Maya paused. She thought about her own lectures, her own campus library, the quiet, the space, the abundance. She thought about how annoyed she'd been last week when the Wi-Fi cut out. The comparison made her feel sick. Ilara didn't just complain in the diary. She noticed the way kids lean forward when a lesson sparks something. The way they asked questions quietly, like they weren't sure they were allowed to be curious. And then one line made Maya's hands start shaking. They think ignorance keeps us safe, but I see how it cages us. Maya sucked in a breath, because that line didn't just belong in 196 for .it felt uncomfortably current. The next entries changed tone, less observation, more resolve. If they will not teach our children, then we will. Maya looked up from the page. Her heart was racing. This wasn't a diary anymore. This was a record of a decision, a dangerous one. Alara wrote about whispers after church, about adults lingering longer than usual, about conversations that stopped the moment someone new walked in. Books started appearing, not many, just enough. A white woman from town, pretending not to notice whose hands she placed them into. Adults standing watch while children learned letters in hushed voices. They called it a school, but Alara knew it was more than that. We are not just teaching words, she wrote. We are protecting hunger. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, annoyed at herself, but something was shifting inside her. A quiet, uncomfortable thought. People risk everything for this, for books, for lessons, for the right to wonder. And here she was, thinking about quitting because she felt tired. She turned another page, and that's when the mood changed again. The writing grew sharper, shorter, more cautious. There was a car outside tonight, Alar wrote. It slowed. Maya's stomach dropped. She could almost hear the silence Alar described, adults frozen, children holding their breath. The sound of a heartbeat too loud in a quiet room. For a moment, Alara wrote, I thought this was the end of it. Maya realized she was gripping the diary so tightly her knuckles hurt. She didn't notice. She was too busy thinking one thing: if they were caught. She didn't even want to finish that thought. Maya swallowed and turned the page, and as she did, she had no idea that the next entry just a few lines later was going to completely change the way she understood her own exhaustion. Because Alara was about to reveal why fear was never enough to stop them, and why stopping was never really an option. Maya should have stopped reading. That's what a sensible person would have done: closed the diary, put it back, climbed down the ladder and gone back to pretending everything was fine. But once you start seeing the truth, you don't really get a choice. She turned the page. The handwriting had changed. still elegant but tighter now. Like Alara was being careful, watching her words. There have been warnings, Alara wrote. Not spoken, just felt. Maya frowned. She knew that feeling, that unspoken pressure. That sense of being watched, even when no one's there. Alara wrote about a sheriff who lingered too long on the church steps. About a deputy who asked questions with a smile that never reached his eyes. He didn't say what he knew, Alara wrote. He didn't need to. His silence was the threat. Maya let out a slow breath. This wasn't bravery anymore. This was survival. The entries jumped days at a time now. Like Alara didn't want to leave too much evidence behind. Meetings were shorter. Voices quieter. Children warned not to talk about what they were learning. Not even at home. Fear has started to seep in, Alara admitted. I can feel it in the room before anyone speaks. Maya's chest tightened. She imagined parents weighing risks in their heads, education versus safety, hope versus harm, a choice no one should have to make. One entry was barely a paragraph long. We argued tonight. Maya read it twice. Alara explained how the community gathered in the church basement, the same place the lessons happened. Some parents wanted to stop, just for a while, just until things calmed down. Others argued they couldn't. That stopping now would teach the children the wrong lesson, that fear wins. Maya could almost hear the raised voices, feel the tension, adults, torn between protecting their kids and protecting their futures. Then Alara wrote something that made Maya's throat ache. No one knew what to do. Until one of the children spoke. Maya leaned closer. But who will teach us about the stars? Her breath caught. The simplicity of it. Not reading. Not maths. Not politics. The stars. The right to wonder about something bigger than the world they'd been boxed into. Maya felt something crack open in her chest. That was the moment. The moment Alara wrote that changed everything. They didn't argue after that, Alara said. There was nothing left to say. Maya wiped her eyes, annoyed again, but unable to stop. That one question had settled it. The school stayed. But the danger didn't disappear. It got closer. Cars slowed more often. Strangers asked too many questions. A window in the church was found cracked one morning. No explanation. We know they are watching, Alara wrote. But the children keep coming. That line sat heavy, because that's when Maya realized something important. These kids weren't clueless. They knew. They felt the fear too, and still, they showed up. Alara described one night when everything nearly fell apart. There was shouting outside, she wrote. Not words, just noise. The adults froze. The children were rushed into the back room. Candles blown out. Darkness. I could hear my own breathing, Alara wrote. I was sure this was it. Maya held her breath without realizing. Seconds stretched. Then footsteps moved away. Silence returned. They laughed after, Alara wrote. The children, I mean. Like fear had brushed past them and missed. Maya shook her head slowly. They were braver than she'd ever been. She leaned back against the suitcase, staring up at the attic ceiling. Her heart was racing. She thought about how close Alara had come to losing everything. Her job, her freedom, maybe her life. And yet, she'd kept going. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because fear wasn't enough to make her stop. Maya looked back down at the diary, and that's when something clicked. Alara wasn't writing this like someone who expected to be remembered. There was no drama, no self-importance, just facts, feelings, truth. Maya realized slowly, painfully, Alara wasn't writing for history. She was writing for someone who might need to understand why this mattered, someone who might one day feel tired, lost, overwhelmed by something they couldn't name. Maya's hands trembled, because suddenly, this diary felt less like a story from the past and more like a message meant to find her. She turned the page again, and the next entry was dated months later. The gap alone made her stomach drop, because she knew what gaps usually meant. Something had happened, something big, and whatever it was, Alara was finally ready to write the ending. The gap in the diary bothered Maya more than anything else. Pages filled day after day. And then suddenly nothing. Weeks missing. Maybe months. Her stomach twisted as she stared at the date on the next entry. Because gaps don't mean peace. They mean something happened that was too heavy to write down at the time. When Alara's voice returned, it sounded different, quieter, measured, like someone choosing their words carefully, knowing they might be read by the wrong eyes. The shelves are nearly empty now, Alar wrote. Not because we stopped teaching, but because there is nothing left to give. Maya frowned. Empty shelves? She read on. Books had been taken, hidden, passed on to families who needed them more. The lessons were fewer now, shorter, more careful. They are watching too closely, Alara admitted. And I can't pretend I don't see it anymore. Maya felt her shoulders tense. She imagined Alara writing this late at night, candle flickering, listening for footsteps outside. One entry stood out. Short, blunt. We were followed today. Maya's breath hitched. Alara described walking home after a lesson, taking the long route like she always did. Halfway down the road, a car slowed behind her. Didn't stop, didn't pass, just followed. I didn't turn around, Alara wrote. I didn't run. I just kept walking. Maya could picture it too clearly. The sound of tires on gravel, the weight of being watched, the choice between panic and control. The car eventually turned off, but the message had already landed. After that, things unraveled quickly. Parents stopped coming to meetings. Not because they didn't care, but because fear had finally caught up with them. I don't blame them, Alara wrote. I would be afraid too. Maya swallowed hard. This wasn't a failure. This was survival. The final meeting happened on a Tuesday night. No shouting. No arguing. Just tired faces and quiet decisions. They asked me what I wanted to do, Alara wrote. And I realized it no longer mattered what I wanted. The school would close, not because the dream had died, but because keeping it alive would cost too much. Maya felt tears slide down her face this time. She didn't bother wiping them away. The unfairness of it all pressed down on her chest. All that courage, all that risk. And still, the world won. Alara's last entry from that year was dated late autumn. The handwriting had softened again, not hopeful, but steady. The lessons are over, Alara wrote. But the hunger remains. Maya paused. She knew that line. She'd read it before, but this time, it landed differently. That was always the goal, Alara continued. To make them hungry enough to never accept less. Maya closed her eyes, because suddenly she understood something she hadn't before. The school wasn't the point, the hunger was. She shut the diary gently and leaned her head back against the suitcase. The attic felt brighter now, even though the sun hadn't risen. Yet, her exhaustion, the one she'd been carrying for months, hadn't disappeared. But it had changed shape. It wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't pointless. It had roots. Maya thought about her own education, about how she'd been treating it like a burden, like something forced on her, and for the first time, she wondered, what if it was never meant to feel light? What if it was heavy because it was built from sacrifice? She climbed down from the attic just as the sky began to lighten. The house was still asleep. She carried the diary with both hands, like it might break if she wasn't careful, because in a way, it already had. It had broken open a truth she couldn't ignore anymore. Later that morning, Maya sat across from her grandmother at the kitchen table. The diary lay between them. Her grandmother didn't look surprised. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded slowly. I wondered when you'd find it, she said. Maya's voice shook. Why didn't you tell me? Her grandmother sighed. She never wanted praise, she said. She wanted you to have choices. That sentence stayed with Maya. Choices, not pressure, not guilt, choices. And for the first time in a long while, Maya didn't feel trapped. She felt responsible. There was a difference. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the old question crept back in. What if I just stopped? But this time, it didn't sound the same, because quitting no longer felt like relief. It felt like forgetting, and Maya knew one thing for sure: she wasn't ready to forget. Not yet. And that was the moment she decided something quietly. Something that would change the way she moved through the world from then on. But she didn't know how hard that choice was about to be. Not yet. Maya didn't wake up the next day feeling motivated. There was no sudden burst of energy. No inspirational soundtrack playing in her head. She was still tired, still heavy, still tempted to roll over and ignore the world. But something had shifted. It was subtle, like when you rearrange a room and can't quite explain why it feels different, you just know it does. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone, missed messages, lecture reminders, deadlines creeping closer, the same stuff that used to make her chest tighten, only now. It hit differently, because for the first time, she wasn't just thinking about herself, she was thinking about Alara, about candlelight and whispers, about children risking punishment just to learn how to read properly, about how education had never been guaranteed. It had been defended. Maya dragged herself to campus that morning. Same walk, same buildings, same library looming ahead of her, like always. But she noticed things she'd ignored before. The way students complained about early lectures like it was the end of the world. The way people scrolled on their phones through seminars, half listening. She'd done the same thing, loads of times, and now it made her uncomfortable. During a lecture, she caught herself zoning out again. Old habits. The tiredness crept in, like it always did. That familiar thought tried to surface. I can't be bothered with this. She almost let it. Almost. Then, Alara's words cut through her mind. We are protecting hunger. Maya swallowed. She straightened in her seat. Not suddenly brilliant. Not suddenly in love with the subject. Just present. And weirdly, that felt harder than quitting ever had. Later that week, Maya found herself standing outside a notice board near the student center. She hadn't planned it. She was just walking past. That's what she told herself anyway. Bright posters were pinned up: societies, events, part-time jobs. And then she saw one: volunteer. Tutors needed. Local secondary school. After school sessions. She stood there longer than she meant to. Her first instinct was to laugh. Who am I to tutor anyone? I can barely keep myself together. But the thought wouldn't leave her alone. She thought about the kids Alara wrote about, sharing books, asking about stars. She thought about how small moments had meant everything to them, and suddenly, tutoring didn't feel like some big heroic act. It felt practical, doable, something real. She signed up before she could overthink it, clicked submit, done. The second she did, panic hit. What if she was rubbish? What if she didn't know enough? What if she let them down? That old familiar voice came rushing back, but this time, another voice answered it. Not louder, just steadier. Show up anyway. The first session was awkward as hell. Maya sat in a small classroom with peeling paint and desks that had seen better days. 3 students, all bored, all suspicious. She felt like a fraud. Her hands shook slightly as she introduced herself. The words came out clumsy. She stumbled through explanations. At one point, she blanked completely. And then one of the kids laughed, not in a mean way, just surprised. You're nervous too, he said. Maya froze. Then she laughed. Yeah, she admitted. I am. Something softened in the room, just a bit. By the end of the session, she was exhausted, but it was a different kind of tired, not empty. As she packed up her bag, one of the girls asked quietly, Are you coming back next week? Maya hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Yeah, she said, I am. That night, she pulled the diary out. Again, she didn't read it from the start this time. She just held it, like you hold something fragile, like you hold something that matters. She realized then that Alara's story wasn't meant to inspire guilt. It was meant to give direction, not carry everything. Just don't drop it. Maya still struggled. She still had bad days, still wanted to quit sometimes, still felt overwhelmed more often than she liked. But now, when things got hard, she didn't ask the old question anymore. She didn't ask, Is this worth it? She asked something else. Who does this help if I keep going? And that question changed everything. because suddenly, education wasn't just about success. It was about continuity, about not letting the line break with her. One evening, while packing her bag for the next tutoring session, Maya caught herself smiling. Not a big grin, just a small, quiet one. She was still tired, but now she knew the difference between burnout and bearing something that mattered. She didn't know it yet, but the choices she was making, small as they felt, were already echoing outward, touching lives she'd never fully see, just like Alara's had. And soon, very soon, Maya was going to be tested in a way she wasn't expecting at all. Because carrying a legacy isn't just about honoring the past, it's about what you do when the weight starts pushing back, and the weight was about to get heavier. The thing no one tells you about doing the right thing is that it doesn't suddenly make life easier. Sometimes it does the opposite. At first, Maya's new routine felt manageable. Uni during the day, tutoring twice a week, evenings spent half knackered but weirdly satisfied. She told herself she could balance it. Plenty of people did more, but tiredness has a way of stacking up quietly. One late night bled into another. Deadlines crept closer. The old fog started creeping back in. Only now, quitting didn't feel simple anymore. It started small. A lecturer pulled her aside after class. "You've been a bit distracted lately," he said, not unkindly. "Everything all right?" Maya nodded automatically. "Yeah, just busy, busy." That word again, always doing the heavy lifting. At home, the comments started too. Her mum noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "You're doing too much," she said. "You need to focus on your degree." Maya tried to explain about the tutoring, about the kids, about how it felt important. Her mum listened, then sighed. "That's nice," she said gently. "But you can't save everyone." That one stung, because Maya wasn't trying to save anyone. She was just trying not to drop what she'd been handed. The pressure tightened. Assignments piled up. Tutoring sessions got harder, not worse, just heavier. One of the kids stopped showing up. Another came in angry one afternoon, slammed his bag down, and refused to speak. Maya sat there, heart pounding, wondering what she was meant to do with that. This wasn't in any textbook. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling again. Same position, same thoughts, different weight. Maybe this is too much. Maybe I've taken on something I can't handle. The diary sat on her desk, closed. She hadn't opened it in days. Part of her didn't want to, because once you know the meaning behind something, you don't get to pretend it's light. The next tutoring session nearly broke her. One of the girls, quiet, clever, always early, stayed behind after everyone else left. Miss Buss didn't want to go home yet. She didn't say much, just sat there, twisting the strap of her bag. Then she asked, out of nowhere, "Do you think people like us can actually go to uni?" Maya felt the air leave her lungs, because that question wasn't about grades. It was about permission. Maya opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. She didn't want to lie, didn't want to promise something she couldn't guarantee. So she told the truth. "I think it's harder," she said slowly, "but I also think it's not impossible." The girl nodded, like she'd expected that answer. "Yeah," she said, "that's what I thought." And just like that, she picked up her bag and left. Maya sat alone in the classroom for a long time after. That night, she finally opened the diary again, not from the start, from the middle, where Alara's writing had been tightest, most careful, most tired. "There are days I wonder if I am doing more harm than good," Alara had written. "Days when the weight feels too heavy to justify." Maya laughed quietly, a sad sort of laugh, because there it was, the doubt, not hidden, not dressed up, honest. Alara hadn't been fearless. She'd been unsure, scared, second-guessing herself like everyone else. And yet, she'd carried on, not because she was certain, but because stopping felt worse. The next few weeks tested Maya properly. A failed quiz, A harsh comment from a lecturer. A tutoring session where nothing clicked and everyone left frustrated. The old voice came back louder. See? This is why you should just focus on yourself. She nearly listened. Nearly. Cancelled the next session. Her finger hovered over the message. Then she remembered something Alara had written near the end. We did not change the world. We just refused to let it close in completely. Maya put the phone down. She went anyway, tired, underprepared, doubting herself, and something unexpected happened. The angry kid from before stayed late, didn't say much, just asked for help with one question. They worked through it together, slowly. When he finally got it, he nodded once and said, "Cheers." That was it, but it felt massive. Maya walked home that night feeling like her bones were made of lead, but her chest felt lighter, not because things were easier, because she knew why she was still standing. She was learning something Alara had known all along. Legacy doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel noble. Most days, it just feels inconvenient, heavy, unfair. And as Maya unlocked her front door, she didn't know this yet, but a conversation coming very soon was about to force her to decide how much of this weight she was truly willing to carry, because understanding a legacy is one thing, choosing it is another.
There's a moment when life stops asking politely and starts demanding answers. Maya didn't see it coming. She thought she had more time, more space to figure things out quietly. She was wrong. It happened over dinner. Nothing dramatic at first. Just plates clinking. TV murmuring in the background. Everyone half listening, half tired. Her dad cleared his throat. "So," he said, casual but not really. "Your results came in." Maya froze. Just for a second. "Yeah," she said. "They're all right." Silence. That dangerous kind. Her mom put her fork down. "All right isn't good enough anymore," she said. "Not at this stage." There it was. The line. The expectation that had been passed down so carefully it almost looked like love. They weren't angry. That made it worse. They were worried. About her slipping. About her being tired all the time. About her distractions. Her dad said it softly. "You've worked too hard to mess this up." Maya stared at her plate. "Because how do you explain that you're not messing it up? You're carrying it further?" She tried. About the tutoring. About the kids. About why it mattered. Her mom shook her head. "You can help later," she said. "Right now, your job is to succeed." Succeed. Like it was a solo sport. That night, Maya cried in the shower. Quietly. The kind of crying where you don't make noise because you don't want to be a problem. She felt split down the middle. One side screaming, "Focus. Secure your future." The other whispering, "If not you, then who?" She didn't open the diary. She couldn't. Because she already knew what it would say. The next tutoring session was off. She could feel it. Her head wasn't in it. The kids noticed too. One of them laughed it off. "You good, miss," he said. "You look bare stressed." Bare stressed. Yeah. That about summed it up. Afterwards, the program coordinator pulled her aside. "You've been doing great," she said. "But I need to ask, can you commit long term?" Maya's heart started racing. Long term. There it was again. Choice. Not later. Now. She asked for time. Walked out into the cold evening air feeling like she'd been punched in the chest. She rang her gran. Didn't even plan to. Just needed to hear a voice that wasn't pulling her in opposite directions. Her gran listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't rush to fix it. When Maya finished, there was a pause. Then her gran said, "Your great-grandmother had this same look once." Maya swallowed. "What look?" "The one where you're trying to decide whether you're allowed to want more than survival." They met the next day. Tea. Biscuits. The diary between them again. Her gran turned a few pages Maya had never noticed before. Older entries. Later ones. The ones Alara never talked about. They threatened her job, her gran said quietly. Told her she'd never work again if she didn't stop. Maya's breath caught. She had a choice too, her gran went on. Protect herself, or protect the door she'd opened. What did she do? Maya asked. Her gran met her eyes. She stopped teaching publicly. Maya felt something sink. But, her gran continued. She never stopped teaching. Alara had shifted. Smaller groups. Private homes. One child at a time. Less visible. Still dangerous. Still deliberate. She learned something important, her gran said. Legacy doesn't mean burning yourself out for everyone. It means staying in the fight long enough to matter. That sat with Maya. Heavy. But grounding. That evening, Maya made adjustments. Not exits. Adjustments. She reduced her tutoring hours. Set boundaries. Stopped trying to be everything. When she told her parents, they didn't fully get it. But they saw something new in her. Clarity. The next session felt different. Calmer. More focused. One of the kids asked about university applications. Another asked about books. Real questions. Real hope. Maya walked home knowing she hadn't chosen comfort. She'd chosen sustainability. And somewhere deep inside, she knew. This wasn't the end of the pressure. It was just the moment she stopped letting it decide for her. Because what comes next is the part where the outside world pushes back harder than before. And this time, walking away won't even be an option. It started with a rumor. Quiet at first. The kind that slips through corridors without making noise. Someone had complained. Not about the kids. Not about the work. About her. Maya heard it secondhand. A message from the coordinator. Short. Carefully worded. Can we talk? Her stomach dropped. That phrase never means anything good. They met in a small office that smelled like stale coffee. The coordinator looked tired. Not angry. That was worse. There've been concerns, she said. About boundaries. About influence. Maya blinked. Influence how? The woman hesitated. About what you're encouraging them to aspire to. Encouraging. As if hope was a dodgy substance. Maya felt heat rush to her face. I'm not telling them lies, she said. I'm just answering questions. The coordinator sighed. I know. But not everyone sees it that way. There it was. The unspoken truth. Some people don't like doors being pointed out. Especially when they worked hard to keep them shut. She left the building shaking. Not scared. Angry. Because suddenly Alara's words weren't history anymore. They were now. That night, Maya didn't sleep. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from uni mates stressing about internships. Emails reminding her about deadlines. Two worlds pulling at her from opposite sides. She opened the diary again. Hands steady this time. Ready. Alara had written about this exact moment. When resistance comes, it never announces itself as cruelty. It comes dressed as concern. As order. As what's best. Maya swallowed. Because that was it. That was the trick. The next tutoring session felt tense. The kids sensed it. One asked straight up, "Are they gonna shut this down?" Maya paused. Micropause. Then she said, "I don't know." Honesty again. Always that. One of the boys scoffed. Figures. They always do. Always. That word hit harder than any insult. Later that evening, Maya got the email. The program was being reviewed. Sessions paused. Indefinitely. Her chest went tight. Not panic. Grief. She walked for hours that night. Cold air. Streetlights. Thoughts looping. Had she pushed too far? Had she done damage? Then she remembered something Alara had written near the end. They can close a room. They cannot erase what was learned inside it. Maya stopped walking. Stood still. Because that was it. The kids had already changed. Even if the program didn't survive. And so had she. But she didn't know yet. That this pause was about to turn into something bigger. Something public. Something that would force her to decide whether silence was safer than truth. The invitation didn't look dangerous. That's how they get you. Panel discussion, the email said. Community engagement and education. Maya laughed out loud. Dry. Sharp. Community engagement. Right. Her gran raised an eyebrow when Maya showed her the message. They want you visible, she said. Or quiet. Depends how it goes. That sat heavy. The event was packed. Teachers. Parents. People who love to talk about opportunity without ever handing it out. Maya sat on the stage feeling her pulse in her ears. She wasn't the most qualified person there. She knew that. But she might have been the most honest. When it was her turn to speak, the room went still. She took a breath. Micropause. Then she said, "I didn't plan on getting involved like this." A few nods. Good start. I was tired. Burnt out. Nearly quit. More nods. Relatable. She told them about the diary. Not all of it. Just enough. About Alara. About teaching in secret. About fear dressed up as rules. The room shifted. You could feel it. Then she said the thing she hadn't planned. The kids didn't ask for shortcuts, she said. They asked for permission to dream. Silence. Proper silence. Someone in the audience scoffed. Dreams don't pay bills, a man muttered. Maya looked straight at him. No, she said calmly. But they decide who gets to earn them. That landed. Hard. After the panel, people approached her quietly. Parents. Teachers. Students. Thanking her. Whispering support. Like Alara's meetings all over again. Not everyone was happy. Emails followed. Warnings. Carefully polite threats. But something had shifted. The conversation was out now. And conversations are harder to shut down than classrooms. That night, Maya sat with the diary one last time. She realized something that made her smile. Alara hadn't known how her story ended either. She just kept writing. Kept teaching. Kept choosing. Maya closed the diary gently. Her exhaustion was still there. But it didn't feel like failure anymore. It felt like proof. Proof that she was standing exactly where she was meant to be. And she didn't know it yet. But the final choice she was about to make would decide whether this legacy stayed private or became something that could never be hidden again. Funny thing about legacies. You don't feel them end. You feel them change hands. The fallout didn't come straight away. That's how you know it's serious. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. Just silence. And then movement underneath it. Maya noticed it in little ways. A teacher emailing her privately, asking for resources. A parent stopping her after the panel, voice low, saying, "My kid asked me about university for the first time last night." Little things. Quiet shifts. The dangerous kind. The tutoring program never officially reopened. No announcement. No apology. Just gone. And for a moment, Maya mourned it properly. Because something had ended. Something she'd poured herself into. But grief doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it just means transition. A few weeks later, a message landed in her inbox. No logo. No institution. Just a name she recognized from the panel. Some of us are meeting. Nothing formal. Just support. Maya stared at the screen. Heart thudding. This was how it started before. Church basements. Living rooms. People choosing each other over permission. She went. Of course she did. The room was small. The tea was weak. The energy was unreal. Parents. Students. Teachers. All asking the same quiet question. What do we do now? Maya didn't rush to answer. She'd learned that lesson. Instead, she listened. That was the inheritance too. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. We don't rebuild the same thing, she said. We build something that can't be taken so easily. No banners. No headlines. Just access. Just consistency. Just showing up. Later that night, Maya went home and opened the diary for the last time. Not to read. To add something. She slipped a page into the back. Her handwriting wasn't elegant. Didn't need to be. She wrote. We're still here. They're still learning. The hunger is alive. She closed the book. Funny thing about legacies. You don't feel them end. You feel them change hands. The fallout didn't come straight away. That's how you know it's serious. No shouting. No dramatic confrontations. Just silence. And then movement underneath it. Maya noticed it in little ways. A teacher emailing her privately, asking for resources. A parent stopping her after the panel, voice low, saying, "My kid asked me about university for the first time last night." Little things. Quiet shifts. The dangerous kind. The tutoring program never officially reopened. No announcement. No apology. Just gone. And for a moment, Maya mourned it properly. Because something had ended. Something she'd poured herself into. But grief doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it just means transition. A few weeks later, a message landed in her inbox. No logo. No institution. Just a name she recognized from the panel. Some of us are meeting. Nothing formal. Just support. Maya stared at the screen. Heart thudding. This was how it started before. Church basements. Living rooms. People choosing each other over permission. She went. Of course she did. The room was small. The tea was weak. The energy was unreal. Parents. Students. Teachers. All asking the same quiet question. What do we do now? Maya didn't rush to answer. She'd learned that lesson. Instead, she listened. That was the inheritance too. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. We don't rebuild the same thing, she said. We build something that can't be taken so easily. No banners. No headlines. Just access. Just consistency. Just showing up. Later that night, Maya went home and opened the diary for the last time. Not to read. To add something. She slipped a page into the back. Her handwriting wasn't elegant. Didn't need to be. She wrote. We're still here. They're still learning. The hunger is alive. She closed the book. Not because the story was over. Because it was safe to rest. Maya didn't suddenly stop being tired. Let's be real. She still stressed about exams. Still doubted herself. Still felt the weight sometimes. But now she knew what it was. Not weakness. Not failure. Inheritance. At graduation, her parents cried. Her gran squeezed her hand. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. They both knew. Education had never been about escape. It had always been about return. Returning with tools. With doors held open. With space widened for the next person. Somewhere, Alara's children were grown. Some had forgotten her name. That didn't matter. Because they'd remembered the feeling. The feeling of being seen. And now Maya carried that same quiet fire. Not loud. Not flashy. But stubborn. Unavoidable. So if you're tired. Not just normal tired. Soul tired. Ask yourself this. What are you carrying that didn't start with you? And who are you meant to pass it to? Because the future isn't always built by the loudest people. Sometimes, it's protected by the ones who refuse to let the light go out.